Hey guys, Kyle Cordiana here. This is going to be my FLW Tour recap for Kentucky Lake. By now, all my practice videos are out, the tournament videos are out, so I'm just going to touch base and go into a little bit more detail about what you saw me throwing and what I was doing and why I was doing it. So when we got there, the only knowledge that we had was really what everybody kind of absorbed from the elites. If you watch that, you know, and those fish were spawning still during the elite event. They were starting to pull out on ledges. You would see hints and pieces of people catching some big ones out deep. Chris Zaldane, Fred Rombana started catching big ones on swim baits. Even Skeet was catching, but just a few a day. I mean, some of those guys were only catching 3 and 4 fish a day, but they were big ones. So it would suggest to us that those fish were starting to be post-spawn. They were starting to pull out. But then again, some of those fish could have been pre-spawn fish setting up, still moving in. It was hard to tell. Those fish in that lake, they feed up so fast that they get huge. They get big and fat really quick. So it's kind of hard to tell whether you're looking at a pre-spawn fish or a post-spawn fish that has got out there and gorged itself. And interestingly enough, I don't think they were gorging themselves on shad. I'll tell you what I think they were eating at the end of this. But anyway, so we got down there and practice was, day one of practice was decent for me. I caught several good fish. And I was just throwing, you know, a big magnum worm on a shaky head, you know, just around bluff walls, deep banks and stuff like that. And I thought that was going to work. And then I ran around and did that for quite a while, and it didn't pan out. So anyway, practice began to be a struggle. You collaborate with other anglers out there. Another angler friend of mine was doing pretty good up shallow. Jeff Dobson was having a really good practice, and a lot of his fish were up shallow. And so by the third day of practice, I was trying shallow bites, and you see me catch a few on a Chatterbait, and then I'd go out deep, and I'd catch 1 or 2 here, there. So that's how my tournament was on day one. I was shallow, I was deep, I was shallow, I was deep, and I was really all over the place. I never really knew exactly what to do. On day one of the tournament, I got paired up with Mark Howard, good friend of mine, fellow Team Kistler member, an awesome human being outside of the sport of fishing. And so we went out and had a great day on the water. Mark lost some really giant fish. He lost one that was over 5, and he lost one in between 7 and 10. The thing about the 5-pounder he lost was somewhere where I caught a big one in practice. So that didn't surprise me. And even when the fish jumped, I could tell that it was a post-spawn fish. It was close enough to the boat, you could tell it's kind of tore up. But when he loses that 7 to 10 pounder, a light bulb went off in my head. We were actually in over 30 foot of water where the boat was sitting, and the fish might have been also that deep. Now, I had not focused my practice that deep at all. I was pretty much 25 foot and in. When his fish came up and jumped, it was huge. And not just big old fish, but big, giant, well-fed up, fat mama, like the kind you're looking for. I hadn't seen a fish that was built like that yet. So I knew that that was a target. That was a fish size and quality and fed up and post-spawn or pre-spawn. I didn't know, but all I know is that was the kind of fish I needed to get back in the event. It was at the end of the day on day one, so I committed to fishing deep. I went shallow a little bit on day 2, but not much because I got little bites. It was easy to catch a bunch of little ones. And I just tried to stay out deep all day. And the video doesn't look like that, but I was out deep for 6.5, 7 hours out of my 8.5, 9 hours of fishing. I was out deep the whole time, just trying to get those bites to go. So, you know, that clued me in that there were some really bigger, better quality fish out, even deeper than what I was doing. And so that one spot was a spot I had found in practice. I didn't fish it. I had caught a fish on something like it, not very far away. I put a waypoint on it, said I'm going to fish that in the tournament. It's just like it, just a little deeper. Anyway, so on day 2, we start there. And I got this last-minute idea at the end of day 2, or at the beginning of day 2, right before takeoff. I was like, I'm going to tie on a big old 3/4 ounce jig and try stroking a jig on that deep point. It's not even a point, it's a hump. It's a, you know, it's a ridge, it's a ledge, what they call it. And here's the jig I tied it on, right here. So this is a Bionic 3/4 ounce jig. This is a big old head on that jig, and this is a real natural craw colored greens and light browns and maybe a little bit of purple glitter in that thing, but not much. And I tipped that dude with a Jean Larew hammer craw, and that color is Minnesota Flash. If I pull the skirt back, you can see it a little bit better. It's got like a chartreuse green shimmer to it on the back side, and the front side just more of a green pumpkin. But I had got fish to bite that on this other bait I'll show you here in a little bit as a trailer. I actually used a Chatterbait trailer. I'll show you how I did that. But I just got it rigged like that, and you let that bait fall all the way to the bottom, and then you hop your rod up, you know, 1, 2, 3 times up real high, right into the ceiling of the garage like that. But you pop it up real high, and you let that bait fall back down, and a lot of times it'd be right at the top of that third hop where you're pulling that bait 1, 2, you know, 2.5, 3 foot off the bottom, and then it falls back. It'd be right at the top of that hop. When you kill it, you'd feel it, thump, and they got it, you know. I had a couple good bites that I missed, but most of the time they got it. I lost that one real big one at the boat, and I slow-moed that and zoomed that in. That fish had that in the back of his throat. I just had to have it skin hooked, you know, right in the back of the roof of the mouth, because when it comes up slow-mo's, the jig's way back in there, and it just comes flying out of it. So you always wonder, how do you lose a fish on a jig? Well, that's how, I guess, when it's real deep like that. Plus these big heads, big 3/4 ounce, 1 ounce heads, when they shake them, you know, that helps rip it and pull it away. But I was throwing this on, this is a rod I just picked up from Kistler just to do this, specifically for this. And it offers a lot of options. But this is a KLX frog jig creature worm rod. So this is a 7'6" heavy with a moderate fast tip. So there's not a whole lot of tip to this. I don't know if you can see the action of this rod because I'm so close to the camera. But yeah, that's not very helpful. But anyway, it's a really stiff rod. It really handles really heavy baits well. I was able to throw this jig a long way. When I get a bite in that deep of water, that stiff rod allows me to penetrate the hook into that fish's mouth a lot better. I had it paired with an Ardent Apex Elite. This is a 7-to-1 gear ratio. And I had it on 20-pound Seaguar and VizX fluorocarbon. And man, that's an awesome setup for a big jig, frog and heavy cover, a big worm, anything kind of heavy duty. The 7'6" heavy Kistler KLX rod. This is an awesome rod for that heavy duty work. The other thing I was doing a lot of is I was throwing a worm. I was dragging a big tattletale worm around. I would cut it up and make it like a short, fat, stocky version of it. I would leave it clipped. But the one that I got the most bites on in practice was this Gene Larew Big Daddy worm. This is a great big old worm by Gene Larew. It's called a Big Daddy worm, and it's got these jointed chunks in it. You see this one's been bit down because it got tore up on a fish, but it's still a really big worm. You know, 10.5 inch, 12 inch kind of length on it. Thing what's cool about this Big Daddy worm is that tail. It's got this big paddle tail, and that's pretty unique. You think about all the other big worms you get, a lot of them are ribbon-tailed. This one has the unique boot tail type action, you know, kind of flaps around, and you get a little bit different action. I had this on a homemade big swing head. It's a biffle head, but this has an extra big hook on it for these extra big worms. This is probably a 1/2 ounce head. And I caught everything on this thing. I had a time in practice where 3 casts in a row I catch a sauger, and then a channel cat, and then a largemouth bass in the same area, all in 15, 20 foot of water. But I would just throw this out here to the bottom, let it sink, and just drag it just like you would anything off the bottom. I wasn't really doing anything special with that. I was throwing that on a Helium 3 by Kistler. This is a 7'6" heavy. It has an extra fast tip, so it's a little bit faster tip. I can just feel the bottom and drag a little bit better. It's a little bit more sensitive. The faster your tip, seems like the more you can feel what's going on down there. So this is a little bit faster tip for dragging something on the bottom. I can really feel it crawling up and over rocks and stumps and stuff. This is another 7-3-to-1 Ardent Apex Elite. I was throwing this on 20-pound Seaguar and VizX as well. Any of these bigger baits, I know big fish down there, you don't have to play finesse with those fish very often on Kentucky Lake unless you're drop shotting. And I didn't really do much of that at all, none in the tournament. So that was that setup. Now, the shallow bite that was going on, you see me catch a fish on a chatterbait, you see me jump one off about 4 pounds on a chatterbait. And I'll show you what I was doing that with. This was a really cool setup. Something really cool happened in practice that you're never going to get to see, but FLW Rider asked me to do a little pros tips on how to throw a chatterbait. And it was really late. It's the end of day 3 of practice, and fishing was tough. And they take me out for like 10 minutes right before dark, and I catch like a 4-pounder, just showing them how I would present a chatterbait in the water. And unfortunately, the light was too low, and we weren't able to use that clip, so I guess you're not going to get to see that. So anyway, this is a Chatterbait by Bionic. They might get, I think it's a Thunderbait. I'm sorry, Stefan, if that's the wrong name for this. But this is their Chatterbait. Check out the blade on this, guys. It's a really cool green blade. It's got a little bit of glitter to it, but it's a dull finish. It's not that shiny, bright chrome finish, which sometimes that's what you're after. The skirt on this is really cool. I think they call it like a bluegill, like a baby gill. So you can see it's got a lot of similar colors of a bluegill. It's got some blues and purples and greens and watermelons. So this one, I also had the same Minnesota Flash Hammer Craw on it. It's the reason I put it on the jig, because I knew they'd eat it. But instead of rigging this thing like a crawdad, I rigged it vertical, right? I rigged it vertical, so when this thing comes through the water, it appears more like a tail of a perch, right? So it's straight up and down as opposed to being like a crawdad. It ends up going straight up and down, and it wobbles like that. It has this same flashy green shimmer to it like a bluegill would have. And man, the fish really liked that. And that was a good shallow bite that was going on in practice, but it was fading. It was more going away for most of the guys. I think there was a few places where real shallow bites still played, but for the most part, this fish are starting to pull out. I'll tell you something kind of heartbreaking is where I caught my 7 and 5 pounder there on day 2, and Mark lost his big one. That ends up being where Jason Lambert did really, really well as well. So it was kind of heartbreaking to see that just a day or two later, that many more fish pulled out there. They were that easy to catch. I mean, he wrecked them and ate pizza and stuff during the tournament. So that props off to Jason Lambert. Way to go, man. That was impressive, but you broke my heart. So what I think they were eating, what I think is really cool, and the reason I know that is because what was in my live well, days later, I came back from the event. My garage stinks. I'm like, what in the crap is going on? I had several dead fish in my live well that my 2 big ones had coughed up, and maybe my co-angler's big ones as well. Well, no, they were all on my side. So my 2 fish, I had a 7 pounder and a 5 pounder in there on day 2, and they coughed up 3 big dead barfish. So what a barfish is, if you don't know, it's like a sand bass. It's just a real small version of a sand bass. They kind of got a yellow shoe to them, but they got the long black stripes down it. They're real white in color, but they're just a small version of what I call a sand bass. And I've always called them barfish. I don't know what else they call them, wipers or whitefish. I don't know what they call them. But barfish is what I call them. And, you know, there's like a Strike King 10XD, looks just like a barfish. And had I known that they were keying in on that, I think you probably could have got a few more bites if you were throwing something down there that really looked like those barfish. But they coughed up 3 of them, and they were big ones, you know. They were 5-6 inch barfish, and you know, no shad at all in my live well. They were all barfish, and I saw some crawdad pinchers and stuff like that. So anyway, I think that's what those fish were keying on. I tried to salvage my tournament with those 2 big fish on day 2. I moved up a lot of points. I was sitting at 149th after day 1 with 4 pounds, 12 ounces, and had 12 pounds on 2 fish the next day. I moved up to 111th or 112th. I'm sitting in 54th place right now going into the final event. Now, they're going to take 43 or 44 anglers probably, or possibly, with the double qualification. So I'm shooting to be in the top 43, 44 to make the Forest Wood Cup, which is going to be on Lake Ouachita in Hot Springs, Arkansas. If I don't know, I played with the numbers, did the math. I think if I can get like a top 30 at St. Clair, I think I'll get in. So fortunately, I'm not completely out of it. I got to do really well at a place I've never been, but it's smallmouth, and I love smallmouth. So I'm so looking forward to that. It's just going to be a blast. My dad's going to get to go with me, so you guys are going to get to see more of my dad whooping my butt in the back of the boat. He needs to be at the front of the boat. I need to be at the back, but he don't want to do it. So anyway, thank you guys so much for all your support. Make sure to hit like. Make sure to hit subscribe. All that jazz. Thank you so much. Sharing my videos. Please just help. It helps buy these products from my sponsors. Help them because they support the sport of fishing, and the more you support them, the better the sport is, the more it grows, the better we can keep doing this and show you guys what's working out there if you want to go to some lake and give it a whirl, you know. Anyway, thank you guys so much. I'll quit rambling on. You guys have a good evening.